I have 1:32. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Abigail, if you'd like to call roll.
Chief Nathan Anderson,
I'm here.
Deputy Director Cummins,
Present.
Chief Stephen Brush, Crime Analyst Julia Chadwell, Sheriff William Jack Kurd,
Here.
Dr. Eric Fritsch,
Here.
Assistant Chief Adam Hooten,
Here.
Sergeant Eli Rivera,
Here.
Chief Deputy Salvador Rodriguez,
Here.
Captain James Taylor,
Here.
Assistant Chief Van Slisser.
Here.
You have a quorum?
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing I'd like to start off with is our former Captain Putin. If you'll notice, he has a different name tag now.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to him. I don't know what he did to make it happen, but congratulations.
I don't either.
You
to be
can keep
honest
that
with
to
you.
yourself. Anyway, congratulations.
Yeah,
Congrats.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Very good. So this is our third advisory meeting on motor vehicle stop data. And I think we've made quite a bit of progress, and I look forward to getting into it here shortly. And so, I think we have a minimum of 2 more meetings before we have to wrap this up. So we're getting down to crunch time, and it's time to start doing it. So we'll get started. The very first thing, if you'll notice, you have the minutes from the February 4th meeting in front of you. If you've had a chance to review that, or if you have any changes or edits to that. And if there are none, if you need more time to review that, if there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the February 4th meeting.
I'll make it. I'll second.
Second. Everybody had enough time to review that in order to, then we'll take a vote. All in favor
Aye.
and all opposed. The minutes pass. Agenda item number 3, receive and follow subcommittee reports and take action if necessary on motor vehicle stops, searches and contraband, and miscellaneous. Unless anybody's opposed, I think that we should start with the miscellaneous. Dr. Cummins created this document that everybody went off of whenever the second committee meeting started. So unless you're opposed, if you'd like to go over kind of what it took for you to create this document. She did this on her own before our subcommittee started, so she did a wonderful job on this. If you'd like to discuss that.
Yeah, thank you. So in the traditional sense, a data dictionary is intended to provide some guidance on definitions. It serves as both a technical reference and a user guide, right? And so we decided in a couple of conversations that would be helpful. And this is sort of a traditional format for something like that. It's a little on the more straightforward side, a little bit more simpler than some of the versions. But essentially what we're looking at is the field name as it's presented within the data collection report from TCOL, our submission sort of portal. The middle column being sort of our definition or any clarity that we'd like to provide. And then the comments for community discussion were elements that we thought maybe the definition should clarify, should add additional detail, if the definition needed modification, or if we still kind of weren't settled and needed more discussion on what the intent was in each of those variables. That's what that third column is intended to represent. So traditionally, the next step would be to sort of review these top to bottom and just to see how aligned with our sort of thoughts the written definitions are. Maybe a little bit of wordsmith, or at least raising any concerns you have that you might want additionally documented there. And then go back to committee one more time to finalize those formal definitions. So if that sounds like a plan, that's probably where we'll kick off today. The motor vehicle stops, would the subcommittee like to lead us top down, or do you want to do it just all as one?
That's how I envisioned it, is that each subcommittee would go over their
Thoughts
items
presented here?
that they went over. So, Assistant Chief Hooten, is it your subcommittee one, right? Motor vehicle? Okay, if you'd like to go over your recommendations.
Sure, yeah, so number one there, under our subcommittee, total traffic stops. Our subcommittee had pretty lengthy discussion on trying to standardize and come together with some sort of definition of what that motor vehicle stop is, what we're going to include, what we're not going to include, in terms of what triggers the capturing of the data. We kind of landed on, obviously, it's a motor vehicle stop, so we want to exclude collisions, where citation could or more likely will be issued, but we don't necessarily include that into racial profiling data because the officer did not initiate that contact with those drivers. We had discussion on, obviously, pedestrians being out. It's not a motor vehicle stop. And then we talked about dispatch calls, and this is kind of where we wanted to come back to committee and get more brains on it, and discussion on, and it kind of goes into another topic of where we were discussing the reasons for the stop itself. But we kind of landed on, if you're dispatched to a call and you're looking for a blue Ford truck that just did a grab and run at somewhere, does that officer have discretion on stopping that vehicle? And we went back and forth on it. Yes, it could be the wrong blue truck, but the reason that you're stopping that blue truck is not necessarily have anything to do with the driver. It's with the reason for the call for service. So is that something that we want to exclude? Do we start losing valuable data if we don't collect those stops? That was something we wanted to bring back and discuss further as it pertains to number one there.
And I think before we move on to the next one, I'd like to open that up to discussion with the group on subcommittee one's comments.
My thought is there can be a generic third category, but the crux of this is really, we do need to continue to separate moving violation from an equipment violation. Those are essential because equipment is more concerning from a racial profiling standpoint in general.
Yeah.
I know from just the general data, the law violation pre-existing knowledge are generally less than 10% of total stops. I don't think we lose anything by just getting rid of it.
Okay.
I don't see anything that we're losing unless we just wanna create a generic third catch-all, third category. But from an analysis standpoint, it's still not much attention is gonna be paid for.
And that's kind of what we talked about. I mean, that's such a low percentage of the data collected. This is jumping to number 6, reason for stop. We were talking about obviously keeping them moving and like Dr. Fritsch was saying, but do we need a third one? Can it be a generic violation of law? That encompasses, everything is a violation of the law to some degree while you're stopping them. Even a reasonable suspicion stop, you're, believing that they're in some violation of the law. So could that be a third category, kind of a catch-all, non-traffic related stop? How we term it is up for discussion, but you've got your moving violation, you've got your vehicle equipment violation, and then you've got non-traffic would be the kind of a catch-all.
So when we talk about this in context with number 6, right now, the way it exists today is we're capturing a lot of things as motor vehicle stops with question number 1. And then once we get to number 6, when I'm looking at discretionary stops versus non-discretionary stops, that's where the filtering occurs. So those, the pre-existing knowledge and violation of laws that are used are then excluded when we do the research and that sort of thing. So if we were to narrow the scope of what a traffic stop is, or the total traffic stops, to just discretionary stops, is where we're really trying to get at, and then use question 6 to then break those down into the categories that matter for research, was this an equipment violation, or was this some sort of driver violation? That then kind of clarifies, okay, this is a discretionary stop, and there's an external factor that I see on the vehicle. I decided to stop this vehicle for a tail light or a headlight, or the wheels falling off, versus I don't like the driving behavior or the driver speeding or, you know, following too closely, things that the person is doing. It helps clarify that in my brain a little bit, is we then don't have to categorize in question 6 with whether, is it penal code law, is it, you know, what sort of things was it? Or was this pre-existing? It would eliminate the pre-existing knowledge, which is such a small percentage anyhow of the data set. I think we'll get less confusion from the officers. If we, in that traffic stop definition, we say these are self-initiated traffic stops of a motor vehicle based on officer discretion to stop the vehicle. That's my 2 cents on it at least. But I don't think we should try to do the same thing as we do in 6 and 1 and you know, break it down in all these different categories. I think it should just be a very clear, succinct definition. And then in 6, then we break those categories out.
Just so I'm understanding, are you recommending that we leave number 1 the way it was, the way Dr. Cummins wrote it, and then break it down into number 6?
Is where Dr. Cummins wrote it?
Ours is in the middle.
In the middle. Total number of traffic stops recorded, all motor vehicle stops includes pedestrian stops. I would say that any self-initiated traffic stops, you know, put something in there about the discretionary portion of it. Because in my mind, a traffic stop, if I get a call from dispatch saying, hey, we've got a black Tahoe leaving the scene of this incident, and I stop that vehicle, as an officer, I may be confused, is that a traffic stop? Or is this I'm doing a Terry stop on a vehicle because it's a suspicious vehicle matching a description and a location? And I'm not using my discretion so much as I've observed a violation and I've made a decision to stop it based on my own. I've had outside influences telling me that this is a vehicle that's involved in something. So I don't know if that clarified it at all.
And just to
Maybe
understand the
not.
big picture of where we're ending up, in the end, the third column goes away, and so what gets presented
Correct.
are the 2. Gotcha.
Correct, the information from the third column is used to inform
And
the wording on the second column.
I think it does need to be modified somehow to reflect what Captain said, and I think people are in agreement too that we're talking about self-initiated traffic stops. And then of course not pedestrians.
Yeah, I do have concern about the idea of only doing the self-initiated. And the only reason I say that, I know we talked about it in a couple of other meetings, but we are introducing a level of discretion in what gets reported and what doesn't, that doesn't currently exist. And so I do have a concern that if we do have bad actors, that does give an opportunity where justification could be made for not logging the data when it otherwise would have been logged. If the practice now is that all traffic stops are documented, and then we're just saying a very small percent, this 10% is pre-existing knowledge, we don't necessarily gain a ton by not reporting that small percentage. But I do think we lose a lot of transparency or clarity in the expectation of when a stop is documented. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that feels that way.
Thought we were talking about leaving pre-existing knowledge later, just taking out collisions and dispatch calls, right?
Yes,
So-
that's what we're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I agree with
Yeah.
that,
Was
yes.
the issue there, is that a practical reality, or are you guys able to not do collisions and dispatch calls?
Well, I think that personally, we don't include the collisions or dispatch calls, but the dispatch call, we wouldn't consider that pre-existing knowledge, right? This Terry stop would be different. We would include any initiated traffic stop, regardless of whether it was from suspicion or moving, non-moving violation.
Another thought I had is, for research purposes, if you almost create a branch in the data, where even if you throw out like, okay, so a certain number of these don't matter, you don't then know in all the future questions that follow which percentage of each race or ethnicity is the one that got thrown out.
For like the crashes and those sorts of things, or the dispatch?
No, the follow-up, I think we're narrowing it down to what they want, what researchers want more by narrowing the stop. But then if you do the pre-existing on 6, you don't then separate later data into which part fell under that and which part fell under the other. So that's what you're saying, right?
So I think just to make sure we're not talking about 4 different decisions, because I may have introduced a whole other layer of complexity that I didn't intend. The first recommendation from you guys is that we not include collisions or dispatch calls. I think I agree with that. On a dispatched call, can you give me an example of how that would translate to a traffic stop in a scenario?
Reckless, say dispatch calls an officer to deadly conduct, somebody or an ag assault, somebody's waving a gun around on the highway.
Domestic violence.
The officer, or a rolling domestic violence call, the officer rolls up, lights the vehicle up, puts it on the shoulder, and then, handles that investigation from there. We don't need to see the person waving the gun around ourselves to then make that stop.
Yeah.
We've already gotten enough to support our detention of that vehicle based on witnesses that have called it in, presumably reliable witnesses that have identified themselves to communications to say, yes, this is the vehicle, here's the license plate, we need to stop that vehicle.
That's what I was gonna get. Do you need the license plate match as the certification, or is it a light
No,
match?
I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
No, we just need,
You need a witness who's
Yeah.
identified themselves.
and then enough details that would reasonably presume that that is the same vehicle.
Yeah.
So if the witness doesn't have a plate and they said it's northbound on this road and you see a vehicle that's northbound on that road in the general vicinity, in the general same time frame, generally matching that vehicle, you can stop them. If now then that turns out to be nobody matching there's instead of a big guy with a gun, it's a family, a soccer mom and her kids, then you say, oh, sorry, my mistake, and you let them go. And you let them go on down the road. And we wouldn't initiate any kind of enforcement action on that. You'd say, I need to look for another Tahoe. I got the wrong one. But that would be one of the main scenarios that you would have where it's a dispatched, directed detention of a vehicle, but I wouldn't call it, for our definitions, I wouldn't call that a traffic stop.
Do like suspicious vehicles go into that too? Like if somebody calls a suspicious vehicle and you stop it, or is that,
That can get really sticky really quick.
then I didn't ask you.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, I'm having definitionally a hard time separating that from pre-existing knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of getting at is there a line that can be defined?
It's gonna have to be well defined because every time we've talked about it in our subcommittee, it comes up, well, we get sent on a call with a white SUV and we have limited description, but if it's a robbery or something serious, a family fight, you're gonna stop that vehicle anyway and you're gonna have to talk to those people for a few minutes to determine what you're dealing with. It's gonna be real hard to not just leave in the pre-existing knowledge and leave it at that, because otherwise you're gonna have to keep breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down to the.
I mean, that's the
I
way.
don't think the officers are gonna break it down that far to where they don't. They're either gonna report it or they're not.
I would just put a third category in 6 then.
Yes.
Because we really want the 2, but then keep a third category and
Well, I
leave the
think it
definition
already
one as
exists
is.
there.
Then I think we're good.
Yeah. The pre-existing knowledge exists in that third, in the as a
Yeah,
third
maybe get
category
rid of
under 6.
the law violation or
I think
whatever.
that,
There's 4 of them right now,
that's where
maybe
we
just reduce it
landed,
to
right,
3.
with it was just having both of them. What's the difference between the two was kind of what we were discussing in our meeting. And
Yeah, that's what we wanted to bring back. I mean,
if we went with one or the other, fine, but both, it just opened it up to, well, I'm gonna put this one this time and I'm gonna put this one this time, and what do either of those mean?
yeah, and with pre-existing knowledge being a small part of, what we're collecting anyway, it's confusing with the definition of motor vehicle stops. You go, well, I was dispatched as that pre-existing knowledge, and it's like, well, that's not what we mean, right? So I think if we eliminate that category, if we get the definition of this traffic stop to include self-initiated stop, that becomes more clear. It's not so self-initiated if I'm told that I need to stop this vehicle. Now there is shades of gray. I mean, there's always shades of gray with it, right?
Because the purpose is we're just trying to make sure that nobody's racial profiling.
Right.
So if dispatch tells me to go stop a white Tahoe, I'm gonna go stop it.
Yeah, it has
No matter
nothing to
what
do with,
the-
it has nothing to do, my argument is it has nothing to do with the driver.
And it
It's the
has nothing to
vehicle
do
that
with
I'm
racial
stopping.
profiling.
And racial profiling is an action based on a person's race. You're not making that action based on a person's race. You're making that action because someone told you to do it.
Yes.
So
That's my argument against the dispatch call being included in this racial profiling data.
And it's in the simplest of terms. You've got a moving violation, clear cut, or you've got a non-moving violation or equipment violation, whatever we decided to call it, or then the pre-existing knowledge, and then
So
that way they're all still recorded.
I tend to lean that way, and the reason, if I'm picturing it in Houston and I'm dispatching it to a unit where I have 6 officer pairs stopping white Tahoes all over because they all meet the description given, like, I think it's reasonable for them to make the stop, but I think it would introduce an opportunity that I would want to make sure I was watching.
So is the proposal to include that in the total traffic stops in the collection and filter those out once we get to question 6 to say, we're not gonna throw the data away, but we set those aside and said, hey, these are things that were dispatched or they were maybe non-discretionary stops.
I think they
that
can
sort of thing.
interpret it in the context of the pre-existing condition, right? Like if you're evaluating the data, you don't have to necessarily give it the same level of insight or the same level of attention. But I think the comment to not stop collecting once you've determined that it is a pre-existing, right? Or to not exclude the submission of those other variables because it's the pre-existing, I think is valid.
Well, I'm not a researcher, but I think that's what we want, right? Because if you get a high percentage of pre-existing for a certain race, then you're gonna look further,
You
right?
need to look at it.
Wanna look
You
at
may have a problem, so I think we wanna collect it, right? We wanna include it.
So to me, I think that you would add to this definition on number 1, that it does exclude accidents, collisions. If you want to have some variation of if a license plate is given and or you're making a stop at a direct dispatch, I think it requires that specific knowledge if you're going to exclude anything there. Otherwise, I would say leave it as a pre-existing, capture it in your number 6 category, and just let it be.
I agree.
Thoroughly confused everyone.
I'm good with that. I mean,
Yeah,
it makes sense to me, cause you can't add the data back in, you always filter it. So,
Yeah.
and if it does become an out for officers, we don't want that, so.
Yeah, I would want an agency to be able to say, look, here's what we've got. Here's what this is, here's what it's defined, here's when we use it, here's how we interpret what this means. Yeah. Okay, anybody have a differing opinion there? Just to make sure, I don't wanna steamroll a. Okay. So it looks like for the definition there on number 1, we'll bring in some additional context on the collisions. We reference here this defined motor vehicle, we were gonna go back and at least acknowledge the CCP definition of motor vehicle there and kind of wordsmith that a little bit. And then on number 6, we probably need to give some example scenarios of what pre-existing should include to make sure that we kind of know where that lies.
So we're getting rid of law violation? Cause right now there's 4. You got 4 options right now. We're moving it to 3.
On number 6.
Yeah.
Moving,
And I think,
non-moving.
and I think you have it in here, but I think in the TCO report, it's called vehicle traffic violation. I would call it an equipment violation, cause I don't know what that means. I mean, me as an outsider doesn't know what a vehicle traffic violation is. To me, that sounds like that'd be something like
That's what it means.
Like
Yeah.
the moving traffic
It
violation.
means equipment.
We have to
So it's like, to me, but it means like moving, not, it's like vehicle traffic, those two terms don't fit
Yeah.
together.
We don't like that term either. We we have
I
to
just make it
translate.
equipment or something.
Like you have moving violations and equipment violations. That's what we all learn in traffic code. That's what we learn everywhere. I think that's a cleaner definition. Absolutely. Yeah.
We were getting rid of the violation of the law because like Adam said, the transportation code is law. So that just
Yeah.
didn't make any sense.
Pre-existing is gonna capture.
Just left it open
Then
for
pre-existing knowledge.
somebody to claim,
Right. Because,
you could claim that on every traffic stop regardless.
well, and say that I do see that the guy point a gun at somebody and then I self-initiate that traffic stop. Well, that would be a moving violation, I guess. It's not an equipment violation. So I think we would dump all that into that same categories. Actions the driver has done to cause the stop versus the status of the vehicle or its registration or whatnot that has caused the stop. Does that make sense?
Maybe, that was interesting. Did you say a gunpoint?
That is interesting.
What was the example you gave again?
Like, if I see them, I mean, I'm sitting in my unmarked car, right? At a stoplight in Houston or something, you know, or wherever. And I see somebody, you know, point a gun at somebody. Now I stop that car. Now I'm not relying on an exterior witness to provide me that information. I've seen it. Now, yeah, it's a discretionary stop, but not really. I mean, a good cop, you have to do something in that situation. But it's not what we would, if I trained an officer, is like, tell me what a moving violation is. They're gonna tell me a whole different set of things. If I say, hey, tell me what an equipment violation is, you know, a deadly conduct is not gonna be in that.
But you're not gonna write a ticket for that violation.
No, I'm gonna take 'em to
Once you
jail.
get them stopped, you're not
Yeah,
gonna write a
they're gonna
ticket.
get-
So
I
In my
probably gonna
mind,
pull my-
right, that is the
you're
example of
gonna
the law
report it.
violation,
That is
right?
an
Or a
example of law
pre-existing,
violation.
if you're grouping those together.
Right, but it's still, it's not about the outcome so much as what made me decide to stop that person? What made me decide to stop that vehicle is, and that's why it's reason for stop. It's a violation of law, but could we group the driver, the moving violations and violations of law together? I don't know.
I can tell you the scenario he described, because no ticket is written, there's a whole lot of those that don't get reported at all. Because it's either a felony or class A misdemeanor, and we, arrest the person, tow the vehicle, do all of those things. We search, we do all of that. I say we don't do that anymore. But that happens, and because I don't get the ticket writer out, which is what captures all this data, that doesn't get captured nor reported by many agencies. And I'll say that so some of y'all don't have to own it. There are a lot of agencies that until that electronic ticket writer, or until I fill out a form that goes to municipal court or the JP, if I'm still using triplicate tickets, that's the only place this data comes from. And so that gun out the window, high risk traffic stop, in the old days, DPS would pull them out the vent window.
Allegedly.
The old days, lock them
Yeah.
out. But that is data that is, I've heard anecdotally from a lot of places is not getting reported. Because it doesn't involve the mechanism most departments are using to report the data, and they don't go back to record management systems or arrest reports or any of that stuff to tag that discretionary traffic stop, even though I agree with you, you kind of have a duty to do it.
You have a duty.
That is not in the current data in most cases. So,
And it's an extreme example, but a more common one may be racing.
sure.
Right, or evading, like, yeah, I'm not gonna write a ticket to this guy, cause that's, piling on, even though we would probably still write a ticket to him, but you leave the ticket off, you arrest him for evading arrest or detention of felony, and then, you've got all kinds of decisions being made in that.
Well, and a lot of it that would fall in the pre-existing category. I work small towns. I know Johnny has a warrant. Yeah, Johnny's getting pulled over on traffic. I'm not writing Johnny a ticket. I'm snatching him out of the cab of his truck. And I'm taking him to jail because he has a warrant. Doesn't get reported. It is a traffic stop, completely discretionary. It would be based on pre-existing knowledge, if we got to question 6. And that's not in the data. Just mechanically, the systems that a lot of agencies use aren't set up to report that.
If I could further complicate that. A DWI generally starts as a traffic violation. And I'm not certain about my own agency. I don't know that we go back and report those, because usually by the time we get to the point where I'm gonna do SFSTs and I'm gonna make an arrest and I'm gonna inventory and impound the car, take the person to jail. The ticket for the initial violation gets written into the report, but I don't know that racial profiling information goes back and gets reported, because we don't get the ticket writer out and write a ticket for the violation, because it's all part of it's the lesser included offense of the DWI.
And to even be able to audit that on a small department like mine or like Chief Bush's, some other ones, even being able to go back and audit that, it's extremely difficult, and I can't even imagine having to do that for Houston. So what kind of mechanism to prevent that from happening is very difficult.
Well, I think the workflows and the process we have are built on our understanding of what we have to collect and our individual sort of agency configuration, right? So I do think that in changing definitions, some agencies are going to have challenges in reorienting to collect data that is being asked. So to the extent that that leeway is given, for the transition period, I think it makes sense. The bigger question becomes, right, is there an expectation from this group that those data points be included based on the definitions that we're now generating, right? And the only reason, I do think, from a researcher perspective, I do think that having law violation is important, because from the law enforcement side, we look at the data as in, this is what we're doing, we're documenting traffic stops, we want to speak to what our traffic stops look like. But from a citizen perspective or researcher perspective, I think there's a lot that goes into the intent of why a traffic stop exists and what you're trying to prevent. And the fact that by non-moving violations, you are still able, right, to do police work that you otherwise might have a challenge doing. So in a conversation where we're talking about should non-moving traffic stops exist, that kind of a thing, I think this is support for sort of the potential outcome of the good police work that comes from those types of stops. So I'm trying to look at it from a full, I guess, system perspective on not just documenting what you're doing, but also documenting support for why you do it the way you do. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, we could leave in the we could leave all four categories, they just have to be defined. They have,
Maybe change law violation to criminal law violation.
yeah,
Non-
yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
make it more
Non-traffic
definite,
related,
more defined.
yeah.
Yeah.
Narrow the definition.
And do we combine pre-existing knowledge with the criminal violation? No?
It may not be a criminal violation.
Yeah.
Like you said, you stopped the wrong car.
That's right.
Sorry.
I think part of that is it needs to put into training, because really we set all the rules. Sandra Bland says that every one of them's gotta be documented anyway, so if they're not being documented now, then they're violating the law now. And that's what changed, and I'm the littlest one here. And because I personally had a case kicked out because I wrote a ticket to someone who had a bunch of meth and all that. And I lost the case, and the guy that taught me slapped the hand and said, always write a warning no matter what. And that was back when we were doing paper. So now my guys, it doesn't matter what happens, there's a piece of paper that gets put on every car it puts on the side of the road. If they stop the wrong car, if they stop grandma, they put paper. Even if they don't take her driver's license, they document it in the system and it goes on paper. Everything's documented. And that was we took Sandra Bland to the extreme to make sure we don't get in trouble.
Sure.
Because it's people like us that get made an example of. And so we go to the extreme. So I think that's just part of, whenever this comes out, as part of the training, as part of that, put it in there, is we just gotta document all the stops and put it on the administrators. TCO doesn't mind telling you what policy you gotta have.
So we got,
Add it to the policy.
so like my agency, how we do it, the ticket writer doesn't collect any of our motor vehicle stop data. It all comes from our CAT RMS. So the officer, anytime a license plate, we have two kind of fail safes for it. Traffic stop, of course, the form automatically comes up, but anytime a license plate is entered, it also comes up. Now, they may not need to enter, the license plate maybe ran on something that has nothing to do with the vehicle that was in motion. The officer then will go in and we have a checkbox at the top of the form that says this was not a motor vehicle stop, and then that form goes away. So a lot of these scenarios where it's like kind of iffy, like when tickets aren't being written and the ticket writer's not used, like our agency still captures that. So that may be something that like try to get these CAD RMS system developers on board creating this stuff. Because we created the form ourselves. We had the ability to do it we use Central Square, and we had the ability to do it, and our IT guys did it. And we were able to, and that's what we use. And it makes it super easy on the back end to pull the report.
And that's how we do it. And we do it just through CAD RMS.
Yeah.
Like
Super simple.
every car that's on the side of the road, like on their MDIS, like dispatch has already put the stop up.
Yeah.
So the stop's initiated, no matter if the deputy wants it to be initiated.
Exactly.
I was gonna suggest, is there maybe something that we can do to make this a little bit less invasive, but work towards being more unified in the way we capture the data? Is there recommendations that we can give to the developers of these systems that say that somehow like make this easier on the agencies to capture? I'm not familiar myself enough with how that process is, how those systems work or how y'all use them. But I think if, without really changing any questions, we could just push the systems to capture it a certain way, then we can be a little bit more consistent.
So we recently, go ahead.
Whatever this changes, I mean, like if the board decides to change whatever, I'll have to take the changes and send them to my software people and tell them, we have till December 31st of 26 to have these implemented. And then, that'll go forever. Ticket writer, CAD system, everything. And that's not unusual because every 2 years they have to change it all anyways because the law changes. So it's not like something that these software companies aren't ready for. If we tell them you gotta add a fourth category or 7 categories, then they're just gonna go in there and add them and push it out.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if somewhere in the process where, you are getting, I take it that CAD means that came from dispatch. So it's somewhere in that process flow where it comes to the officer from that, and then no matter what the outcome is, it gets counted toward.
So each of the different vendors are gonna handle the data collection differently. Now, we do ours in the e-citations. Other agencies do it in CAD, some do it in RMS, some may do it in self-reporting on an Excel sheet, I don't know. But I think the way forward probably from a unified like instruction set is similar to how like NIBRS does it. And now I don't wanna recreate NIBRS, so don't miss it. But there is a very standardized, these are the codes, this is what that definition means. These are the published standards from TCOL on what is expected from this profiling. We just went through our refresh a couple years ago and getting a new system, and we had to do the research for them. So I had to, we had to pull up the laws and say, okay, we need to collect this data point, this data. And so that was a burden on the agency to define to the vendor exactly what we needed to collect and how. If there is would be a published document to say, here's TCOL's data standards and requirements for racial profiling, here is the list, including codes or anything like that, and then publish it on the website or whatnot, then we as agencies could then tell our vendors, it's the law, it's changed, here's where you go to view it. And you don't have to ask me all these questions, but you can just point them to it. And I think they would be easier on making those changes in the future as things go on. But I don't think we should get so deep in the weeds to say that when an officer does a traffic stop, it needs to be initiated in CAD and CAD needs to collect this sort of thing, because every agency is gonna do it differently depending on the vendor.
And I think this document will serve that purpose in many cases.
Yeah.
I think as you flesh this out, you know, it's pages and pages, but it's redundant because of, you know, it breaks every single one by race and ethnicity, even though there's no change. So, but giving them this, they should have a key, if you will, on how to program it. And if they're smart, they'll look to column 2 where there is, you know, the definition. And if they're inclined, or I guess if you pay for it, it's generally the thing, they would, you know, could be drop-down menus, flags, whatever, where the officer can bypass it, or it can be a draw down where the officer can go look. I don't remember what I'm doing. I think a lot of the value in this is gonna be training on the front end, FTO training. We really don't talk about this in the BPOC, but there may be some value in, you know, adding this to basic peace officer course. At least an exposure to this, because this will flesh out more. So as you know, we do about 15,000 new appointments every year. So turnover and repopulation of the business. So I think this is gonna be valuable on a couple of fronts. One is to do what Captain Taylor's talking about doing is a guide to give CAD, RMS, ticket writer vendors.
I bet they'll love it. They'll probably package it into their sales program and say, hey, we already do T-Cole racial profiler reporting in our thing.
We want them to,
Yeah.
right? We,
Yeah.
on the DIR contracts, to the extent that we can hold them to 1 year of implementation on state mandated changes that aren't charged back to the agency, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that we need support from them on, so that it's not them trying to convince us that what they have meets what's being asked when we know very clearly that it's not and changes need to be made, right? Like that's how I think this ultimately gets transitioned a year out, is reflected in those contracts.
Yeah, and if you like labeled it as like T-Cole's requirements for CAD, RMS and citation vendors, then we can say, hey, this isn't the agency asking for this change. This is T-Cole
Correct.
asking for this change.
And
Yeah.
it's, we only buy applications that are both TCOL compliant and NIBRS compliant according to these guides. Right, like that's where it's headed.
When I was talking about vendor, I was telling them about your data dictionary, because I never thought about it. And they said, well, we can put a question mark on every one. Like, so if the deputy's in there and they're like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, they've been working too many hours and they don't remember, they can hit it and it's gonna go right there to explain to them each. And that's in our like he said, that's easy.
The
He said,
tool tips,
Give
yeah,
the,
he said we can put that on every one of them. And I said, well, when this gets finished, I'll get you a copy so you can change it, because they were like, that actually sounds like a good idea. Of course,
Yeah,
they'll probably
I-
sell it out to.
I mean, if you guys develop a training course, we could even put a hyperlink to the training course in there too. Be like, hey, when you get back to the office, click that link and figure it out.
Yeah, and we certainly have the capacity to train up or to build an online event. Even if it's not mandatory, there's a ton of people get most of their CEE for free on our MyTeco. There are people just looking for hours. I need 2 hours. Oh, here's one. Beep. You know,
But I think departments will look at this and say, hey, you know what, this adds better structure to us, better clarity, and we'll just make it a policy. All the guys are gonna have to go through our training and to do this right. If we're gonna incorporate it into our programs, then the guy's gotta take the training for it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So, Melissa, do you wanna read off what you?
what I think where I think we're at. Yeah, so I think we do modify the description on 1 to add some additional clarity, excluding those collisions, those accidents. I don't think we specified dispatched calls here. But I do think on number 6, we add both examples and clarity between the differences between law violation, pre-existing, and define all of those out. I do think that there's one more thing I made a note of. Yeah, I think it's just the scenario based where it may not be in the definition itself on number 6, but it does give examples for each of those categories. And we could always run that by, gut check against our agencies. Are you seeing something we haven't included or something that you wouldn't be able to follow in said matrix? And that gets us through sort of those 2 definitions. We've got one, 2, maybe 3 or 4 other ones that the first subcommittee had, or no, we jumped to number 2 pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, we just need to cover.
Just need to cover location, and then, so for number 3, I actually really, really like the proposed language there. I think it adds a ton of clarity. I don't know. So the difference there is we're saying prior to the decision to stop.
Yes.
So any objection there? Cool, good win on that one. And so for location of stop, the conversation around this was, you could have the location where you first observed the vehicle, location where you stopped, location where they stopped. And so it was just trying to add some clarity on exactly which location we were documenting, which then led into a better understanding of how to categorize that road type. So I think, I like the proposed language. It makes more sense to me. I like the observed violation to me makes sense.
Is there any discussion on number 2?
To me, that actually makes more law sense because, look, I see it all the time. I didn't run a stop sign, yeah, you did back there at Main and they were stopped a mile down the road. There's always that complaint. It's hard, if you don't put where it happened, it's kind of the basis of the whole stop. It's gotta be where it's observed, because it doesn't matter where you get stopped at.
Yeah. And this,
DWIs, I made it home, you can't arrest me and you can't tow my car, well, I got you DWI 3 miles back down the road.
Right.
Exactly right.
the micro to macro, I think will make more sense when we look at the order maybe of the options in the drop down or how they're listed on the collection form. We can add some language there, but I don't think it'll be confusing once we look at it in context. Anything else from subcommittee 1?
Yeah, that was all of our,
Thank you, guys.
stuff on that.
We have a lead for 2.
Who's leading committee 2?
I will take over that.
All right.
Uh,
So we're on number 7.
Julie's out, so we'll, so number 7, was a search conducted, indicates whether a stop or a search was conducted during the stop. And what we'd kind of kicked around is if you search the passenger, but you're not searching the vehicle or the driver, should that be counted? And everything we were trying to talk about was centered around the driver and the vehicle. So the question is should we limit was a search conducted to just the driver or to the vehicle? So for kind of discussion for the brains in the group to open the deal is was a search conducted, should we further define that to say was a search conducted of the driver or the vehicle? Exclude any of the passengers being searched.
Any initial thoughts?
I think the vehicle is the driver. The passenger's not though. I think to say just the driver, but if you search the vehicle, that's the driver, cause he's in care, custody, and control.
That's right.
But now if you search the guy in the back seat, that's a total different thing.
And what we were kind of going, and we'll get to it later on the incident to arrest portion, is you may arrest the backseat passenger for a warrant and you're searching him. Well, that's not the search was conducted during the event, but it had nothing to do with
the traffic.
the traffic stop, really. You would have searched that guy if you'd have stopped him at 7-Eleven on a warrant. Cause it's a search incident to arrest or an inventory. So we would propose to limit or include in the definition that was a search conducted of the driver or the vehicle. Does anyone have any heartburn over that?
No, I tend to agree with that.
Number 8,
Is there any other thoughts or discussion on that?
sorry.
The only question I would have is on like pre-existing knowledge. Are you gonna stop a vehicle because you got knowledge that there was a passenger in that vehicle?
Yes, but you would still search the passenger, but the officer's discretion is kind of what's at the key of it. It's like if you're searching the vehicle and the driver, I still think it should be about the vehicle and the driver. You get a phone call about the passenger being wanted and you stop them, well, now we're getting full off the path of what we're trying to accomplish as far as racially profiling the driver and detecting that. Is now you've got heads up that you need to deal with it.
I think if you drive your race and ethnicity statistics of the driver, I think if you start doing this, I think you need to refer all of that to the driver. Race and ethnicity of the driver, was the driver searched, or driver or vehicle?
Right.
Because, Deputy Director, I think you explained how Houston's, if you have one traffic stop with 4 people in the vehicle, you're doing 4 entries.
If we engage
Into
those
the system.
passengers, we do.
If they engage the passengers in any means, you're doing 4 reports. Which, and again, Cullen's opinion, not the opinion of the Commission on Law Enforcement, you're over-reporting. And so, and then Captain, when you said, DPS is scrubbing the passenger stuff and only reporting relating to the driver, in my mind, that is closer to what we're looking for in Code of Criminal Procedure. So I think I like the idea of tagging this is the driver and the vehicle. So then I think you might do the same in race and ethnicity of the driver, of the driver, of the driver,
So,
of the
yeah, I was just
driver.
gonna say that, cause I really hadn't read the middle column, but both race and gender, the 2 identifying characteristics specify drivers.
Okay.
Race or ethnicity, drivers, gender classification.
Yeah.
So it's specified there, which I think makes more sense than to just kind of carry it through the entire data collection process after the stop.
Right. And that's why I support under number 7, let's
The
tag it
driver.
to the driver.
So
Yeah.
anything found in the vehicle gets tagged to the driver,
If it's
reported
found
as
in the
one
vehicle,
incident?
but not on well, we'll get to that one. That's a
Okay.
question too, because we're talking about hit rates then.
You're right.
But as far as I think what we're getting right now today is we're probably getting more searches than traffic stops for sure, right? Because you're doing searches of the vehicle or searching the driver and you're getting all kinds of things going on. But I think if we limit it to the driver and the vehicle, then it's gonna narrow it back down to the right path. But yeah, so can we move on to 8 or okay, so, sorry. The reason for search, the initial reason for search, right now it's not defined, in the definition, it's just reason for conducting a search. And during the course of a traffic stop, there may be multiple reasons for doing a search, right? You may have probable cause, or you may have reasonable suspicion, which you don't do that, but consent. You may have like 5 different versions of that, but there's only, it's a one option on the box. So we propose to define that to the officer's initial reason for search. Because if they had probable cause to search, they find dope. I don't want, we don't need to know that they did a search incident to arrest them, right? It's more of the officer's discretion and what caused that person to decide to search that vehicle. What was the reason for it? So we just propose adding the definition in there is what was the reason for, the initial reason for conducting a search.
Kind of like that better than the multi-select that we had, thrown around.
And it seems like from a programming standpoint, it's gonna be a lot easier on our vendors too,
Yeah.
but I think it's simpler for an officer and quicker
the
for them to
initial.
fill out the report. Every button, every mouse click I hear about, so if I don't have to add 5 mouse clicks, I'd be happy.
Well, and some people you don't wanna give them the option of all 5 mouths.
Yeah,
You're gonna get 5 every time.
I had 5 reasons to say.
All the reasons, all the reasons.
Consent,
Add 'em
leading
all.
to probable cause, and I mean, it's.
Any agreements or thoughts on number 8?
So, the question on here, I didn't understand this one for subcommittee. Should the number of incident to arrest always equal number of arrests? The answer to that is no.
Yeah, we talked about that.
So I just
You
say,
said no, and I was like,
yeah, the number of search incident to arrest should not,
go back
Equal.
to the,
right, because if I'm not transporting them, I may be the officer that did, there's a lot of scenarios that we could
Yeah.
brainstorm about that. Someone else transports them, they do a search, me personally, I search everybody.
Yeah.
But there may be an officer out there that's like on FTO or something like that, and they didn't conduct the search or, I don't know. The motors guys, they say, well, the guy that's transporting is gonna search them for me anyhow, so I don't conduct a search. It's just too sticky. The answer is no, it should not be a 1-to-1 incident to arrest to total number of arrests. Alright. So number 9 was contraband discovered, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with 7. Indicates whether contraband was discovered during the search. And I think we should clarify that to indicate that contraband was discovered on the driver of the vehicle and include the passenger. I think we should include passenger, but here, and I'll give my reason why, is if they're holding and I'm smelling, if I've got some sort of probable cause to search that vehicle and its contents, and I search and I don't find it in the vehicle or on the driver, but the passenger's the one holding like a marijuana or something like that. We don't want it to appear that that officer's decision to search that vehicle was wrong because we're not getting a hit, right? They did find what they went to search for, they just didn't find it on the driver. So I don't know, that one's kind of one that I wanna kind of open up for discussion because it cuts both directions, right? It kind of goes against what we're talking about with limiting to the driver and the vehicle. But thoughts?
Yeah,
At that point, you're back to potentially divorcing that data point from your race and ethnicity. Or gender, race and ethnicity. So I think it's kind of all driver, all vehicle, all the time. And exclude, it doesn't make the arrest go away, it doesn't, but I think if we're reporting arrests and we're only reporting arrests of the driver, I don't think we can report the search of the passenger. I think search is generally gonna get tied to arrests when contraband or evidence of crime is found. And so I think we either need to exclude passengers kind of globally, or we're back to including them in everything.
I think you're right. I think you have to, just because the TCO report doesn't require it, doesn't mean that the agency can't continue. It's kind of like she says in Houston, like if there's 4 people in there, there's 4 stops. And that's great for their numbers because they need those numbers to know what they're doing. But TCO, the whole purpose of this doesn't matter about those 4 pedestrian stops.
Yeah.
They just care about the driver and was he racially profiled or her.
I think when you talk about the reason for the search, so like in that example of like smell of marijuana, so that's a probable cause search, so you're searching the entire vehicle anyway. So like in my mind, if you have a probable cause search, I think it's good to keep that going, even if the contraband is found, however you get to the point where you find it on the passenger, your initial reason for the search was probable cause based on the odor coming out of the vehicle. So I think it still fits in what we're trying to do, vehicle and driver.
Yeah.
Where it's located in the vehicle, I mean, at some point that passenger was in the vehicle and they transferred it, they did whatever. But I think it still captures the right data point for all probable cause specifically. Now, if that becomes incident to arrest on the passenger, then
Then we exclude that.
yeah, we exclude it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with it is this is not talking about whether the driver is arrested for the contraband yet. We're trying to say the officer made a decision to search the vehicle and its contents, the vehicle or the driver. And then did they find it? So maybe that one gets divorced from it. And then we start talking about was a person arrested for the contraband? Then if we find contraband, but the driver's not arrested for contraband, I don't know if that skews the data all over the place.
That would become the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it sounds like, just based on what people are saying, it sounds like we still need to, even on this one, keep it driver and vehicle centric. And say, was contraband discovered in the vehicle or on the driver during the traffic stop? Everyone good with that?
Yep, I think that's the way it's gotta land, yeah.
Yeah.
And then if the passenger gets arrested, it's the finding resulted in an arrest, well, there's not, never mind. Answer my own question. Alright, got you.
So then you could infer, okay, we found contraband, but the driver wasn't arrested, so. Alright. So we just have a couple on these, on the drug category, or the different descriptions of contraband, just the things to add to kind of clean it up or group them together. On number 10 for the drug category, we would include paraphernalia and chemical precursors into the drug category. Now, I know for a lot of report writing systems, paraphernalia does not go in the drug category, it goes into like articles or instruments or whatever your particular system calls it. I think NIBRS calls them articles. But we would want to, this is not about the NIBRS side of things, this is more about, did I search the vehicle and did I find something drug related in the vehicle? You know, we can have probable cause to search something based on the odor of a drug, and I find paraphernalia. Well, I was successful in my search. My decision was correct, even though I didn't find drugs themselves as per the NIBRS definition. I found paraphernalia that would, you know, be tied to drugs. So we propose including those in the drug definitions.
Could you just use your words, drug related, drug contraband being drugs or drug related items?
So that would be the label instead of, or in the definition, count of contraband discoveries categorized as drugs or drug related items. Yeah, I'm good with that. Easier, yeah. Okay. And of the same vein, for currency, I know the troopers and stuff, they only consider cash currency. You know, when we're doing, you know, a seizure and we're doing it in our evidence system, you know, it's gotta be, you know, US currency for us to count it like that. Or, you know, sometimes foreign currency. We would propose to include other financial instruments into the currency category. Because, you know, stolen credit cards, financial instruments, financial documents and things like that.
That are currently other.
Yeah. Stolen financial, yeah, they're all currently in other.
Yeah.
What is the penal code definition of a financial instrument? Does that include everything?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't taken the test in a little while. I'm just gonna be on that.
Technically asking somebody that can look that up. I can't quote it.
I guess that's a graduate laws though.
I think, does it not include, the instrument is also the manufacturer of, right? Like the credit card, the scanner or the blank cards with the encoders and the,
Yeah.
I think it includes all that as well.
I'm not up to arguing with you about it.
Yeah, I can't say it's not, so.
But the intent is to group things into like categories, financial crimes or forgery crimes into currency, cash, methods of payment, that sort of thing, all into that currency section, just to clean it up a little bit. Remove some of that stuff from other and bring it into other categories.
I think it makes sense.
And we
some
can,
wordsmith on the definition.
yeah, the
It's not an
definition
issue.
is the legalese definition of it, we can. And then other, anything that we didn't move up, we would just say, should we include some examples? I'm kind of torn on that, I think. If at the point you go through things that we've added some things to, like the paraphernalia, drugs and currency, if you get to all the way down to other at this point, yeah, just put it in other. It's gonna be such a sliver of a percentage of it. I don't know if we need to add anything to it. So we were kind of on the fence with that, as if anyone in this committee thinks that there's something that we could further define in other or clarify, but I
Cause
think,
last year's data, like 12% was other.
yeah.
So it was big, but the thought is moving those two things, clarifying drugs and then the currency thing, then other's gonna become 4% or something.
Yeah, and maybe we put something, I mean, we didn't have anything like robbery tools, and then we discussed that. Are they in here?
Yeah, we had talked about instruments of the crime or
Yeah, like
something like that.
criminal tools,
Yeah.
criminal things. The fact is we don't know what other contains right now, right? We've got a large percentage, but without peering through all that data and finding out what does other mean right now, we can only kind of suspect. I think a lot of it may be paraphernalia, just my own personal opinion, because we've hammered our troopers so hard, at least on our agency, that, paraphernalia is not drugs. Don't do a drug record for paraphernalia seizures, that's just an article. They may have moved, there's no article on the racial profiling stuff, so I need to put that in other. I suspect that some of that sort of thing is going on. Does anyone have any other ideas of what other has kind of started coming into? I mean, burglary tools and things like that, or stolen merchandise.
No, I mean, I would be really interested to see after a first year pass how small that percentage got and have some targeted conversations maybe. I mean, I think the idea that human trafficking or some of those others, I think would be really incredibly good data, but I don't think it's happening on a high enough occurrence to commit to that change right now, knowing what it does to downstream systems and training and trying to define it. I think you have to know it's something that's worth collecting before committing to another category. That's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree if you expand what goes in current categories, financial instruments, and actually, look at the penal code state refers that as writings in forgery statute. And then it defines wills, codicils,
Right.
security instruments,
People out there stealing
money,
wills.
stamps, postage stamps. Yeah, I think if you get more reporting into the currency, and then the same thing with the drugs, like you said, I think you'll see that other category shrink, probably significantly.
I think so as well. I'd be surprised if it's still even 4%, if I'm being honest.
But if a year or two down the road, if it's still high, we can then do further definitions and training and handle it that way. I think expanding it out to an endless number of categories is kind of madness at some point.
Well, you made a good point, I think, that once you get to the other, if nothing else fits and it's something you're collecting and it's some kind of evidence of something, then it's an other. And it would be easier to clean up once we got to that point, once we knew what the others were at that. Cause there's
Yeah, I think you
lots of
get-
categories to file stuff in.
I think you could get way too specific. Ski masks in Texas when you stop the robbers are, they're tools of crime or they're evidence of a crime. But we can't have a ski mask category. So I think your other's gonna get smaller. I wanna say, I believe it'll be significantly smaller. What cops generally capture on traffic stops is a lot of paraphernalia, it's precursor. Oh, it's not a drug, okay. It's other. Other's just a convenient place to dump it.
we have to remember that we're not trying to create an evidence collection system. And
True.
we're just trying to do racial profiling categories and define if we have a positive, or if we have a positive hit, what is the category? I think when you're doing research, if you have a less than 10% in other, I don't know how much further breaking that down is going to add a lot of value to the research.
Not at all,
So.
because it's of the searches, right? So you're down into like
Yeah, you're
2% of
already-
your total sample,
Yeah, right.
right? It's
Yeah.
negligible.
So I think that probably we're at good enough on the number of categories and just training and offloading stuff into more broader categories. And go all the way down to question 11, result of stop. Citation and arrest, and this kind of follows that same vein. This is just following that initial logic of anywhere we've got that is clarifying of the driver. Citation and arrest of driver, written warning and arrest of driver, that sort of thing. So we want to know what would the outcome of the driver on that traffic stop.
And I'm assuming this question for data validation folks over there, but sometimes I see, and I don't know that it's in TCO courts, but where agencies wanna take written warning and arrest and citation and arrest and then sum them to arrest. But those are three distinct categories. So when y'all, cause I've never seen the system, when y'all enter that data, would it flag that?
Yeah, so it's
So
gonna,
if they try to put it in, they have 50-50 and then they sum it to 100. If they try to put in 200 arrests, it's gonna go.
that is one of the validations that
Yeah.
hits,
I just
yes,
wanna make sure I did.
yeah.
Your total at the bottom needs to equal the total of your traffic stops, so you can't.
Yeah.
You can't throw them in all the time.
And then do the data validations I just think of it as columns and rows, but up the column for each race and ethnicity. So if you have 50 black motorists who are arrested, it's gonna catch it. Cause the row may add, but the
It
column
does
has
the
to
race
add too.
categories as well.
Yeah, it's so like your total, it's broken down, you've got your total number of arrests, or let's say citation and arrests by race. And that total needs to add up to the total number of citations and arrests in general. And then your total number of outcomes need to match up with your total number of your citations, arrests only, warning and arrests, all those things
All
need
those
to add
things.
up to your total number of traffic stops.
And then do they also have to do it by race ethnicity?
Yeah,
It also, so the columns have to add up too.
everything has to add up both directions.
Figured so, but
Now,
The only thing that, I'm sorry, my name is Gary Canal, I'm the one that takes care of racial profiling at TCO.
Gary?
The only thing that does not match up is number 10.
that contraband is types of contraband?
Yes, sir. Description contraband, because the reason
Yeah.
why,
you can have
we've all been officers long enough to know if an officer stops and someone has drugs, there's a good chance they're gonna have cash, there's a good chance they're gonna have a weapon. So we're not making anybody pick the howard. So that's the reason why, at one time we did, but we decided that it was too much.
We had to
crashed.
We had to redirect. And so that's the only thing that does not, that our system doesn't catch.
I think when this rolls out, just as notification to agencies is that I would plug that piece. Cause most agencies we work with, the number of contraband searches that resulted in contraband equals the contraband discoveries. I realize in practice that's probably not true, but they're doing some kind of internal hierarchy system where if it's drugs and weapons, we're counting the drugs. And they match, and it's probably about 90% of our agencies, they match. In realization, I don't think that's accurate, just because I'm sure there's more one type of contraband seized. So I would just
Probably driven
relay that to
by
the
time
agencies.
we probably drove that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so
Down and send
But
the multi-select.
So are you advocating for making it all?
no, I'm advocating for it to be open, but for the agencies to say, you want that.
Okay,
We want you to do that, cause I don't think they're doing it.
I'm not sure we collect multiple contraband type per record.
Yeah,
I don't think our system
Yeah,
allows
see,
that
I
collection.
think there are some of the systems that they're using may
So then it's an
restrict it.
internal thing that
And
is
so
forced to do it.
If I
like a limit
select
to
one,
one.
I don't get
It's
to
gone,
select
no
one.
other option. That's how ours is.
But that
You only get
was,
to pick one.
that's been brought up.
Whichever one matters to you the most.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's ours.
we get to build ours, so
Fair enough.
it's multi-select, so
But we can change that.
yeah. We get credit for all that.
So that's the kind of thing that would be nice to have in a vendor specific document that this can be multi-select or
Mhm.
So are there any other edits or recommendations for the data dictionary that it houses right now with the changes?
There was one quick note, that Mark and I have when we were looking at it, I just want to clarify. Let me find that, I think it's on question 12. So since we've been focusing on, even this previously in question 11, and focusing on the driver, should question 12 also be arrest of the driver?
Yes.
For the violation of traffic law?
Oh, arrest based, I got you.
Yeah, it was just
Yes.
continuing the driver part,
Yep.
yeah.
And
Just for
then,
consistency.
let me check, see if there's another one down here.
Same thing on 13.
I think the more you can put driver in there, the better, just put in everyone.
Well, I think now that we've made it through the initial round of discussion, the race doesn't have to be on every category, you just, we'll specify that the question requires capture by race. I think we wanted to make sure that there weren't any categories that needed to be collapsed or expanded further. That was the thought process in leaving it that way, but if it reads more cleanly
Yeah.
without all of the in-between, which I think it will, that would help reduce the number of spots that driver might need to show up.
And then at the very end, I think we had talked about deleting the force bodily injury to officer and bodily injury to both.
Yeah, so the conversation and I think this would have come up in our subcommittee and was probably the only one that we had tagged for discussion here, was discussion around force and how that then related to what we were reporting as injury on officer suspect both. It was a little bit confusing and how what you were supposed to be reporting. Were you supposed to be reporting them separate or more similar to how we do the arrest citation groupings where each one is its own sort of group and then the total equals the number of injury. I guess the first question is, are you guys consistently capturing injury on suspect and or officer by count? Cause I'm not consistently, not reliably. Right.
I don't think so.
And we thought that was that was pretty far from what most agencies were doing. And that might not be something that we would collect moving forward in terms of the number of injury. But
So one of the issues we have with that question, or not issues, is we're just like a reporting issue, is that information is generally stored in a whole different database.
Yeah.
Right, we're storing that in our use of force database. Now, we've always collected the force used on suspect for the racial profiling data collection, because it was one of the original questions in there. But the both or injury to officer, we've had to go and pull that from our use of force reporting deal and then trying to determine, okay, was this the driver of the vehicle and which officer was this that's injured? And there may be an officer that doesn't even have anything to do with the traffic stop that shows up later, he's injured. And so trying to parse those out and report it, we just reported all of them, right? That are over report and no report. So, I don't know. We don't consistently.
So is I guess the proposal then was physical force used resulting in bodily injury used on the driver, is that what, so then it's all.
yeah, the thought process is we would revert back to what it was maybe a year or two ago, where we were still reporting an answer to that physical force of the driver as defined in the criminal code procedure, but we weren't including the officer injury, suspect injury, or both injuries as a separate reportable. We do the exact same, and the use of force definitions and what we report in our use of force system is different than the CCP in the force use here. And so there's a lot of back and forth and sort of misleading data. If an officer trips and falls and twists an ankle, is that really what we're intending to capture there?
And did we use just mere commands to the driver rather than, but we would rather be more transparent than not, so.
Yeah, I mean, statute goes back to where the officer used physical force that resulted in bodily injury during the stop. So that's
Complaint
the,
of injury, remember, or complaint of injury. That's the sticky point.
Because it's bodily injury in the definition of the penal code, which would include a complaint of.
Correct.
But the use of force resulting in an injury to officer, that's not in, is that in statute?
that's not statutory.
Not statute. And it wouldn't include complaint.
So is that still in the report, or is that, you mentioned
still in
something was
there.
deleted a couple years ago? Is that what was not used?
It's there.
It's still there?
It's there.
Okay.
It's there. I'm not sure if it prints out on the like receipt summary, but it is still there in terms of the data entry
Good
portion,
data.
for sure. Any strong thoughts one way or the other, whether we should still collect the number of injury?
What's the value in it, right? Injury to the officer, I could see one hand side of the coin is, if they injured an officer and the suspect is injured, but honestly, this doesn't say which occurred first, right? It shouldn't be used as a use of force analysis on, it's just more of who's getting hurt on traffic stops. So is there a academic value in just knowing in generally who's getting hurt on traffic stops? Obviously, the suspect or the driver, that's important, right? Because we want to know if somebody, especially an individual officer, is using force more often on drivers. But as far as the injury to officer portion of it,
Cause you can infer causality
right?
with
That's
those
the
data
difference.
points. It could even be an officer's didn't use his training in the force properly, which led to his injury. So there's just so many different reasons for
the
that.
trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's value, but I think the assumption is based in the interpreter and it's being assumed wrong. So I think because we can't give the clarity here, it's more risk to do this and allow the assumption than to take it off.
It's
That was sort of my
ambiguous data.
assessment,
And
yeah.
I think y'all having to do all the extra work just to track the data is not
I don't,
either. You gotta
I
go
don't
into use
think
of force
it's-
database
Full
to figure out
I
what
don't
it
think
is.
it's
It
right.
isn't even tied to our traffic stops very
Correct.
cleanly. So it's
It's
not
not
a
worth the
value.
time for any marginal value we
No.
would get.
I would recommend that if the FBI were to modify their definition of use of force, and it could be adopted and applied in this context where you have sort of that standard definition, that it be reconsidered for inclusion. But without that without that firm definition across platforms, I think there's more assumption than value.
Right, and if you were doing a study on it, or you were looking at officers injured, then you should just go to
Would
the
use
Leoka
Leoka,
data
yeah.
source.
Go to the-
You would
yeah.
absolutely use
So
Leoka.
there's no point in then reinventing that here.
Yeah.
True.
So I would propose, and I agree, that removing the force resulting in bodily injury to officer or both should be removed from the set of questions.
And that the force is driver, cause right now it says force used on to suspect. Can we just put the driver?
Change it to driver.
Yeah, so it's always driver, cause the suspect could be someone different.
Internal people that.
Probably lots of reason, but
I'm sure they're looking at it as-
Suspect get hurt,
Yeah,
officer
he's
get
getting
hurt.
hurt, but the officer's getting hurt too.
It was self-
But it's-
No, it makes sense, yeah, I mean, I think it's, city council, you can make that argument if you're talking to city council, but look, I mean, just as many officers got hurt as suspects.
yeah. I think in order for this to be the accurate data source to relay that information, it would require a modification to to what we're defining as forced. I really do, because I think it's pretty inclusive. So inclusive that the normal person might not agree. I mean, with complaint in this context. So, okay. So what I do think we should do is draft up the proposed language after today and then come back and vote on then, as opposed to the ones that we feel good about today, voting and then coming back later. But I don't think there's any more discussion on that piece, right? We're still cool with dropping. Okay. And it would just be for the officer in both selection, we would still leave the force question for the driver rephrased.
Very good. All right, so we all get on agenda item number 3. We move on to agenda item number 4, discuss and take action on matters related to motor vehicle stop data. The next step in this process that TCOL's looking for is, I guess, our data collection form. Is that correct? Or
So are we, what we're talking about, if we're gonna translate, you just said translate these into form, right? Do we need an instruction sheet or will this all fit on just 4 minutes? Like, how, that's the step you're looking at, right?
Yeah, I think we would finalize the definition here, which would then solidify any modification to the collection. We could call out the modifications based on changes from what it is currently. So it could be submitted as a supplemental document of this is the definition we're proposing and this is how it would translate to the collection form. And then here's what the ultimate form would look like in a printout version or something like that, so that you have some working. I think that would be the cleanest way.
It almost feels like you don't need an instruction sheet with these minor tweaks.
The hope,
Yeah.
right? The hope is that the definitions are so clean that you look at it and go, yeah, I know what I have to do here. That's the hope. I think we start there, and then if we need additional instruction based on someone who hasn't seen it, the instruction's only gonna be helpful to the training material. I just don't wanna predefine an instruction sheet that then is accepted by the committee that might not translate once you get into it further in terms of training.
That's the
Yeah,
other part.
I think once we have this, and the committee's committed all the words in terms of trying to build it into instructions both for folks submitting the reports, but also to train down to troops. I think we can do that internally. I think the committee's done enough good work that we can translate it into learning objectives and give examples and that kind of stuff, so we can handle it from there.
And there was also one more step, Jessica, I know we talked about data format types and things like that. I think we apply them after the definition, before the vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just do another version of this that includes a couple of other columns like format and single select or multi-select kind of thing.
Okay.
is that something that you think should happen in a subcommittee between now and the next meeting or after the next meeting?
I don't think it needs to happen before the next meeting. I don't know that a subcommittee would be required. But it could be. The only thing that I think we're gonna hit an issue with, I don't think we're gonna hit issue with the data type or the data format, right? That's all pretty standardized, it's just where I think we're gonna hit an issue is where we would allow a multi-select, but we might not have defined something as multi-select. In the example of the contraband, right? I don't know that we tell you that you can't submit your multi-select form, but I'm also not sure that it's the committee's recommendation that we mandate multi-select either.
Oh, yeah, no.
I don't know.
I think that especially if an agency only wants to submit one property type, they
Their
shouldn't have
systems are
to.
built that way, I think.
Yeah,
it
they
needs to
shouldn't have
stay
to
that
change
way.
it. I think it
To me,
should
that's a whole,
allow
Yeah,
multiple submissions,
yes.
but not require
Yeah,
multiple submissions.
the way the legislature does it is use permissive language. The agency may make this,
And I think we would use that, right? May allow multi-select, and then if you then write it into a modification a year, 2 years out for the actual system change, because I do think it would require that much time to modify the systems we're in, given the sophistication. They're really, when you start changing logic, it tends to take quite a while.
Well, and that, one thing I will absolutely tell you is we appreciate that you're not adding 10 questions and, you know, that, no, a lot of it is you've taken what exists and, you know, better defined what goes in them. We'll use, I would say we need to modify column number 1, 2, just, you know, if it's drugs and paraphernalia, let's put it in the title as well as the definition. But we're not having to re-engineer from scratch, nor go back to the legislature and try and get them to change things unless the committee arrives at some changes they want. But I think this is good work. From our perspective, it'll be easier to put into practice.
The only other thing would be validations. That may require some discussion. I think we've arrived at quite a bit of it already, but
In terms of validation, you're looking for logic, relationships between the variables, what has to equal what?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I do think if there's an opportunity to add a tooltip to those fields that pop up saying, reminder, this must equal, we get the warning after you submit if you get it wrong. But it would be nice if you enter it wrong or you run a pre-check or something and it says, double check your math.
That
That's not
reminds me,
math.
since I was doing our entry
yeah.
several weeks ago, is there's no incremental save option. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just gonna.
if I were quicker, we
not gonna
wouldn't
kick
need
that
an
horse.
incremental save, but I need one every
Save and
single
exit,
time.
save and exit.
We are modernizing.
So Melissa, I know that you've done a lot of work on this and you have the information to amend it at this point. Are you good with doing that?
I don't mind doing a draft for the group, I really don't. I don't mind doing it with someone or doing it by myself. I don't mind at all. And I think I can do it before the next meeting. So I guess the question would be, are we gonna present it and discuss before we come back? Or just bring back the draft next week or next month and review from there?
So the way I envision it is that it'll come back next month during the meeting. If there's discussion, we'll discuss it and then move forward after that. And so unless something comes up between now and then, I don't wanna say I don't anticipate it, but
Does anyone have something that they think needs to be addressed at the subcommittee level between this month and next month's meeting? That would be the question. Okay, so if we can get it drafted up and out, maybe we'll send it a week or two before the next meeting so that you can have time to review. If not, then we'll come back ready to discuss.
Yes, we'll coordinate that with you
Yeah.
for sure.
I think that's good.
awesome. I think it may be a good idea between now and then for you to also talk with Dr. Fritsch as well. I mean,
Yeah.
just to.
I'm happy to help wherever, yeah, definitely,
Absolutely.
yes,
Thank you.
yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Is there any more discussion on matters related to motor vehicle stop data? And the data Bible. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda number 5. I think we already have this date set. I don't know what it is offhand. I know it's in April.
April 8th.
8th, you said? We back to Wednesday, is it a Wednesday or
Wednesday.
Tuesday? Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
So it is. It is Wednesday, April 8th. And that will be here at the same location. Is there any concerns or issues with that?
Same time, right? 1:30.
We're good. Okay. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, receive public comments on any topic without action.
Chloe.
Yeah, nothing.
Being none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Everybody else.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Talking over each other down there.